AITA for exposing my parents with receipts after they took my life savings for my brother? My name is Callie. I'm 24. And until last spring I was still living in my childhood bedroom in a suburb outside Nashville, Tennessee, telling myself it was temporary. I worked full-time at a veterinary clinic, took night classes, and saved every extra dollar for a graduate program in Colorado that I had been dreaming about since I was 19. My room looked like a person halfway out the door. I had Walmart moving boxes stacked beside my dresser, a plastic bin full of kitchen stuff I had bought on clearance, and a blue folder labeled Colorado sitting on my desk. My acceptance letter was tucked inside it with my scholarship notice, housing information, and a handwritten budget I had redone at least 20 times. My parents liked to call me their steady one. At church, at cookouts, at family dinners, my mom would put her hand on my shoulder and say, "Callie has always been so easy. Never had to worry about this one." People smiled like that was a compliment. For a long time I took it as one. I thought steady meant responsible, mature, trustworthy. It took me too long to understand that in my family steady meant available. It meant I was the one who could be asked to pick up groceries on my way home after a 10-hour shift. I was the one who could cover the electric bill just this once, because Dad's paycheck was delayed. I was the one who could lend my brother $20, then $50, then $200, and not make a scene when he forgot to pay me back. My older brother, Reed, was 29 and had somehow never become the person everyone kept insisting he was about to become. Reed was charming when he wanted to be. He had that easy grin that made older women at church say, "That boy could sell sunshine." He remembered people's names, carried casserole dishes to cars, and posted pictures with our parents on holidays with captions about being blessed. But behind closed doors, Reed could turn a flat tire into a family emergency, and somehow I was always the one asked to hold the flashlight. If Reed missed rent, Mom said he was going through a season. If Reed quit a job because his manager had an attitude, Dad said he just needed the right opportunity. If Reed borrowed money and didn't pay it back, I was told not to keep score. Family isn't a ledger, Dad liked to say. Funny how he only said that when Reed owed someone money. I worked at a veterinary clinic off a busy road lined with fast food places, tire shops, and chain coffee shops. Most days I came home with dog hair on my scrubs and scratches on my forearms from nervous cats. The break room had lukewarm coffee, paw print mugs, and a microwave that made everything smell faintly like old soup. I loved it anyway. I loved the animals, the routine, the feeling that I was doing something useful. At night, I took classes online or drove to campus for labs depending on the semester. I was tired all the time, but it was the kind of tired that felt like it was taking me somewhere. Colorado was the dream I didn't talk about too loudly at first. A graduate program in animal behavior. Mountains. Distance. A new apartment where nobody knocked on my door because Reed needed something. A life where my phone didn't buzz every time my family's bad decisions needed a quiet fixer. When I got accepted, I cried in my car in the clinic parking lot. It was raining lightly, the kind of Nashville spring rain that makes everything smell like wet pavement and grass. I sat there with my phone in my lap, staring at the email until the words blurred. "Congratulations, Callie. Partial scholarship. Fall cohort." I called my mom first. She answered on the third ring, distracted. "Hey, sweetie, I'm in Kroger. Is it quick?" "I got in," I said. There was a pause. Then she gasped, and for one clean second, I let myself believe she was proud without conditions. "Oh, Callie. That's wonderful." Dad was proud too in his quiet way. He hugged me when I got home and said, "Knew you could do it." Reed texted me a thumbs up emoji and, "Look at you, big shot." I ignored the sting of that. For the next few weeks, I floated between excitement and panic. I made spreadsheets. I searched apartment listings near campus. I calculated gas money for the drive, first month's rent, security deposit, used furniture, groceries, textbooks, clinic license fees, winter clothes. Every dollar mattered. The savings account was supposed to be my safety net. It had my paychecks, my graduation gifts, tax refunds, money from weekend pet-sitting jobs, and deposits my grandmother had made before she passed away. My parents had helped me open it when I was younger, so my mom was still listed as an authorized user. I knew that. I had never worried about it. That sounds ridiculous now. At the time it felt normal. In my family, questioning access was treated like accusing someone of bad intentions. And I had been trained since childhood to avoid making people feel accused. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I was sitting in my car outside the veterinary clinic during lunch, eating crackers from a sleeve because I had forgotten to pack real food. I had 12 minutes before my next appointment, a golden retriever with allergies, and I needed to pay my housing deposit before the deadline. I opened the housing portal, copied the amount, then switched to my banking app. The number on the screen made no sense. For a second, I thought the app had glitched. I refreshed it. Then I closed it and opened it again. My savings account, the account that should have had a little over $18,000, had just under $1,200. I stared at it so long my phone dimmed. My first thought was fraud. My second thought was that I was going to be sick. I clicked into the transactions with shaking fingers. There was one large withdrawal, then two smaller transfers. The biggest one had happened 9 days earlier. The smaller ones were labeled in ways that didn't tell me anything useful. I called the bank before I called my parents. The woman on the line was polite and careful. She verified my identity, asked me to confirm recent activity, then said, "It appears the withdrawal was made by an authorized user." The clinic parking lot seemed to tilt. "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew. She gave me my mother's name. I don't remember ending the call. I remember sitting there with the crackers in my lap, hearing muffled barking from inside the clinic, thinking about the Walmart boxes in my bedroom. I called my mom. She didn't answer. I called again. This time she picked up with a sigh. "Callie, I'm in the middle of something. Where is my money?" Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Silence. That was when my body understood before my mind did. "What money?" she asked, but her voice had changed. "My savings account," I said. "The Colorado money. The account you took money out of." She exhaled my name like I had disappointed her. This is not a conversation to have over the phone. It became a phone conversation when I opened my account and found almost all of it gone. Another pause. Then she said, "Your brother was in serious trouble." I closed my eyes. Of course. What kind of trouble? Not something you need to get worked up about. "Mom." "He made a mistake," she said. "A serious one, yes, but he needed help quickly. Your father and I had to make a decision." "With my money?" "With family money," she corrected. My hand tightened around the steering wheel. "That was my savings account. It was an account we helped you set up. That doesn't make the money yours." "Callie, lower your voice. I'm alone in my car." "Well, you're speaking to me like I'm some stranger who stole from you." I remember staring at the dashboard, at the little dust line near the air vent, trying to keep my voice steady. "How much did you take?" She didn't answer directly. Reed could have lost everything. And I'm supposed to lose my graduate program? "You can always go next year." That sentence did something to me. Not because it was loud. It wasn't. She said it gently, like she was offering me a blanket. "You can always go next year." As if the scholarship would wait. As if housing deposits and deadlines and 6 years of planning were just things I had made up. As if my life could be paused because Reed's couldn't be managed. I went back into the clinic late from lunch. My supervisor, Aaron, took one look at me and asked if I needed to sit down. I said I was fine, then nearly put a cat's file in the freezer instead of the cabinet. That night, I confronted my parents in the kitchen. Our kitchen had yellow light, oak cabinets, and a little ceramic rooster my mom refused to throw away even though its beak had chipped years ago. Dad was at the table with sweet tea. Mom stood by the sink, wiping an already clean counter. They had clearly talked before I got there. Dad started first. "Callie, your mother told me you're upset." I almost laughed. "Upset?" Mom folded the dish towel in half. "We understand this is disappointing. Disappointing is when a restaurant gets your order wrong," I said. "You emptied my savings account." Dad held up a hand. "No one emptied anything. There's still money in there. About enough to rent a moving truck and then sleep in it." Mom's mouth tightened. Sarcasm isn't going to help. "What happened with Reed?" Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at the counter. That was how most hard conversations worked in our house. Dad performed concern, Mom controlled the information, and I was expected to accept whatever version kept the peace. He had an incident, Dad said finally. What kind of incident? A serious situation with a client, Mom said. I frowned. A client? Reed did contract sales for a home renovation company, though did was generous. He complained constantly about clients' schedules, paperwork, his boss, traffic, and the unfairness of being expected to show up on time. What did he do? Dad rubbed his forehead. Callie, details are not the point. They are when you used my money. Mom snapped. We kept your brother from legal trouble that could have ruined his life. The room went quiet after that. There it was. Not a bad month. Not rent. Not car repairs. Legal trouble. I sat down across from Dad because my knees felt weak. How much? I asked. Mom didn't answer. Dad looked away. How much did you give him? Mom said. Most of what was needed. I opened my banking app and set my phone on the table. You took $16,900. Dad winced. Mom's eyes flashed. Don't put it like that. How should I put it? We used available resources to protect this family. No, I said. You used my graduate school money to protect Reed from consequences. Dad leaned forward. Reed is your brother. And I'm your daughter. That landed for maybe half a second. I saw something flicker across Dad's face, but Mom stepped right over it. Nobody is saying you don't matter. You literally just told me Reed's emergency matters more than my future. Don't twist my words. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw every casserole dish in the cabinet onto the floor. Instead I asked, when are you paying it back? Mom blinked like the question was rude. Dad said, we'll figure something out. I need a written plan. Mom let out a short laugh. A written plan? Yes. For your parents? For the people who took almost $17,000 from me without asking. Dad's face hardened. Not angry exactly. Embarrassed. Which, in my family, usually turned into anger if you gave it enough time. Don't turn family into a business transaction, he said. It became a business transaction when you transferred money out of my account. Mom pointed at me. This is what I was afraid of. You go get accepted into some program out of state, and suddenly you think you're above us. I stared at her. There it was again. The real fear. Not Reed. Not the money. Me leaving. I don't think I'm above you, I said. I think I'm allowed to have a life. Mom's eyes watered instantly. She was good at that. Not fake crying exactly, but fast crying. Weaponized hurt. I cannot believe you would talk to me like this after everything we've done for you. I almost apologized. That's how deep it went. The apology rose in me automatically like a reflex. Sorry for raising my voice. Sorry for making this harder. Sorry for wanting the money I earned. I swallowed it. I want the money returned, I said. Or I want a signed repayment agreement. Dad pushed back from the table. We're done for tonight. The next morning Reed texted me. Not called. Texted. Hey, heard you're freaking out. I stared at those words while standing in the clinic break room, my scrubs covered in white dog hair, coffee burning my tongue. I typed back, you mean about my missing savings? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Don't make this dramatic. I'll pay you back when I can. What happened? It's handled. With my money. Callie, seriously. I said I'll make it right eventually. Eventually. That word made my face hot. I asked again what happened. He didn't respond for 6 hours. When he finally did, it was a picture of his dinner like nothing had changed with the caption, Mom made chicken casserole. You coming by? I didn't answer. For 2 days I moved through my life like I was underwater. At work, I smiled at clients and explained medication schedules. At home I avoided the kitchen. Mom acted wounded and quiet, which was worse than yelling because it made the whole house feel like I had done something wrong. Dad knocked on my bedroom door one night while I was sitting on the floor beside my moving boxes. You got a minute? I didn't want to say yes, but I did. He came in and looked around at the boxes. For a second he seemed sad. Then he ruined it. You know, your mom's been crying. I looked up at him. About taking my money or about me being upset? He sighed. Callie. No, really. Which part? He sat on the edge of my bed. The mattress still had the same pale blue comforter I'd had since high school. Your brother messed up. Badly. We're not denying that. But sometimes family has to pull together. Why does pulling together always mean I lose something? That's not fair. Isn't it? He rubbed both hands over his face. You're strong. You've always been strong. I'm tired of that being the reason I get less. He looked at me then and I thought maybe he heard me. Then he said, Colorado will still be there next year. I turned away before he could see my eyes fill. After he left, I opened my laptop and started downloading bank statements. At first, I was only looking for the big withdrawal. I wanted dates, amounts, proof. But the more I looked, the colder I felt. There were smaller transfers I hadn't noticed before. $300 here. $750 there. $1,200 the previous winter. A few were labeled as transfers to an external account. Others looked like cash withdrawals. Over 2 years, they added up to more than $5,000. Some of them happened around dates I remembered Reed having rough patches. A car repair he never explained. A rent issue. A misunderstanding with an old employer. I sat there in my childhood bedroom, staring at the statements while downstairs my parents watched TV at low volume like we were a normal family. The next day, I went to Nina's apartment after work. Nina had been my best friend since community college. She was the kind of person who answered the door in sweatpants, handed you water before asking questions, and could tell from your face whether you needed advice or just silence. That night, she took one look at me and said, "Oh no. What did they do?" I told her everything. Not gracefully. I talked in circles. I cried once and got mad at myself for crying. I defended my parents twice before catching myself. Nina sat cross-legged on her couch, listening without interrupting. Her cat curled beside her like a judgmental loaf. When I finished, she said, "First, you're not crazy." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Second," she said, "you need to secure everything they can still touch." I already changed my banking password. Good. Change your email password too. Add two-factor authentication. Make sure your mom isn't an authorized user on anything else. Credit cards, phone plan, insurance, all of it. I rubbed my forehead. This feels so extreme. Nina leaned forward. Callie, love should not require financial access. That sentence stayed with me. She made me open my laptop right there. We went through accounts one by one. Bank login, email, school portal, phone account, credit report freeze, password manager, two-factor authentication. I removed my mom as an authorized user from the savings account, then moved the remaining money into a new account at a different bank. My hands shook the whole time. Nina didn't soften the truth, but she didn't make me feel stupid either. "You were raised to trust them," she said. "That's not the same as being careless." The next piece came from my Aunt Tessa. Tessa was my mom's younger sister, though they had never been close in the easy way some sisters are. Tessa lived about 40 minutes away and worked as a school librarian. She was quiet at family gatherings, the relative who helped wash dishes and noticed when someone's smile didn't reach their eyes. She called me on a Thursday evening. "Your mom says there's tension about money," she said carefully. I was sitting on my bed with a basket of unfolded laundry beside me. "That's one way to put it." She said, "You're upset about a family emergency fund." My stomach tightened. That's what she called it? Yes. It was my savings account. There was a long silence. Then Tessa said, "Callie, how much do you know about the money your grandmother gave you?" I sat up straighter. "My graduation money?" "Not just graduation." I didn't speak. Tessa lowered her voice, though I didn't know who would be listening. "Your grandmother made deposits for you for years. Small ones at first, then larger ones after she sold her house. She wanted it used for your education." My mouth went dry. "Mom said Grandma helped all of us." "She did," Tessa said. "But she was specific about yours." Specific. That word cracked something open. "How do you know?" "Because she gave me copies of the letters." The next evening, I drove to Tessa's house after work. It was a small brick place with wind chimes on the porch and shelves full of books in the living room. She made tea neither of us drank. Then she brought out a folder. Inside were bank deposit records, photocopied notes, and several letters written on my grandmother's old stationery, slightly yellowed at the edges. I recognized her handwriting immediately. Careful, slanted, elegant in a way nobody writes anymore. One letter was addressed to my mother. Ma, this money is for Callie's schooling and her future. She is a quiet child, but she notices more than people think. Make sure she has one door nobody can close. I read that line 3 times. One door nobody can close. My grandmother had died when I was 16. I remembered her smelling like lavender soap and peppermints. I remembered how she used to slip me books with little notes inside. I remembered her once telling me, while Reed and my cousins played loudly in the yard, "Don't shrink just because other people take up space." I didn't know she had seen so much. Tessa sat beside me on the couch. "I should have said more earlier," she said. "Why didn't you?" She looked ashamed. "Your mother told me the account was being managed properly. After your grandmother passed, every time I asked, she said you knew about it and everything was fine. I didn't want to start a family war if there wasn't one." I looked down at the papers. "There was one," I said. "I just didn't know I was in it." Tessa touched my hand. "I'm sorry." I took pictures of everything. Then Tessa made copies and gave me the folder. "Do not give them the originals," she said. That was when I realized she was angrier than she looked. The second twist came from Jessa. Jessa was Reed's girlfriend, though girlfriend seemed to depend on the week. She was 26, worked at a salon, and had always been friendly to me in a slightly nervous way, like she could tell our family had invisible rules but hadn't learned them yet. She messaged me 2 days after I saw Tessa. "Hey Callie, I know things are weird. Reed said you're mad about helping with his situation. I just wanted to say I didn't know your school money was involved until after." I stared at the message. Then I typed, "What exactly did Reed tell you happened?" She responded almost immediately. That he damaged Mr. Halden's property after the client dinner, and they wanted to settle it quietly because of the police report and his job. He said your parents offered to help and you were okay with it because you had scholarship money. My pulse started pounding. I wrote back slowly. I was not okay with it. I was not asked. My parents told me almost nothing. Jessa sent a bubble, then stopped. Then another. "Callie, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew." Mara texted Reed that they were using the account, and he said, "Callie will throw a fit." And your mom said, "She'll calm down. She always lands on her feet." I went still. A few seconds later, screenshots appeared. There was my mother's name. "Mara, your father signed what the bank needed. This has to be handled before anyone at church hears a version that makes Reed look worse. Reed, Callie's gonna lose it. Mara, Callie has options. You don't. Dean, will talk to her after it's done. No need to create drama before we have a solution. Reed, I'll pay her back eventually. Mara, focus on keeping your job. Your sister always lands on her feet." I read the screenshots until the words burned into me. Then Jessa sent more. Older messages. Reed asking his parents for help months before. My mom telling him not to tell me. Dad saying, "We can move some things around." Reed joking, "Good thing Callie saves like a grandma." My mother replying with a thumbs up. I had to put my phone down. Not because I was surprised they had lied. Because some part of me still wanted them to have lied with guilt. But they had been casual. They had discussed my work, my savings, my future like I was a backup battery they could plug into Reed's life whenever his ran low. For 1 hour I let myself fall apart. Then I got organized. I saved every screenshot. I backed them up to a cloud folder my parents couldn't access. I printed bank statements at Nina's apartment. I made copies of Grandma's letters. I requested confirmation from the bank showing authorized user activity. I emailed my graduate program and explained that I had a family financial situation and asked about options for extending the housing deposit deadline. I did not post online. I did not yell. I did not tell my mother what I knew. That was the hardest part. Because she kept performing innocence. At dinner she would say, "You've barely spoken all day." Dad would say, "We can't fix this if you punish us with silence." Reed came by one evening to do laundry and acted like I was the awkward one. He leaned against the laundry room doorway while I folded clinic towels from my car. "You know," he said, "you're making Mom miserable." I didn't look at him. That must be hard for her. He snorted. Come on, Cal. I messed up. It happens. Does it? You think you're perfect because you work with dogs and got into some fancy program? I folded another towel. He lowered his voice. You don't even need all that money right now. I looked at him then. He shrugged. You got a scholarship. Partial scholarship. Okay, but still. I was in real trouble. And I wasn't. You were inconvenienced. There are moments in life when a person says something so honest it becomes a gift. Reed thought he was minimizing what he had done. Instead, he gave me the clearest picture of how he saw me. My future was an inconvenience. His consequences were an emergency. I smiled a little, not because anything was funny, but because something inside me had stopped begging to be understood. Good to know, I said. He frowned. What does that mean? It means good to know. The Sunday dinner invitation came through my mother 2 days later. Not an invitation, really. A summons. We're having everyone over after service, she said while I was making coffee. Your aunt, your cousins, Reed Jessa. We need to clear the air. I turned slowly. Do we? Yes. This has gone on long enough. I looked at her carefully. She had curled her hair and put on the soft pink blouse she wore when she wanted to look gentle. That was when I knew this dinner wasn't about clearing the air. It was about controlling the story. Who knows what? I asked. Mom opened the fridge. People know there's tension. What did you tell them? I told them you were struggling with the idea that sometimes family has to sacrifice. I almost laughed. Did you tell them what I sacrificed? She closed the fridge harder than necessary. You are welcome to explain your feelings at dinner. My feelings. Not the transfers. Not the letters. Not the screenshots. My feelings. That was her plan. Make me emotional in front of relatives. Make me look young, dramatic, ungrateful. Let Dad sigh. Let Reed look wounded. Let everyone pressure me to forgive before they understood what had happened. I said, okay. Mom blinked, surprised by how easy it was. Okay. I'll be there. Then I went to my room and packed a duffel bag. Not everything. Just enough. Clothes. Documents. Laptop. Grandma's letters. Medication. The little framed photo of me and Grandma from my high school graduation. I slid the folder of proof into my tote bag and texted Nina. Dinner is tonight. Can I come after? Her response came in less than 10 seconds. Doors unlocked. Cat will judge you, but I won't. Sunday dinner smelled like chicken casserole, green beans, and sweet tea. Our dining room was too small for the number of people my mother had invited, so everyone balanced plates on their laps or stood near the kitchen island with paper napkins. It looked normal in the way family gatherings look normal when everyone is pretending. My cousin Lark asked me about Colorado with careful brightness. My uncle talked too loudly about gas prices. Aunt Tessa arrived with a calm face and hugged me longer than usual. Jessa came in behind Reed, quieter than I had ever seen her. Reed avoided my eyes. Mom waited until plates were full. Of course she did. People are less likely to leave when they're holding food. She stood near the sink and tapped her glass lightly with a spoon. I just want to say something, she began. Dad looked down at his plate. I set my fork beside my napkin. Mom's voice trembled in exactly the right places. This family has been through a stressful few weeks. I know emotions have been high, but I believe family is about grace. It's about not turning on each other when life gets hard. A few relatives nodded. Reed sat back with his arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man bravely enduring unfair treatment. Mom continued, Callie has been hurt. We understand that. But she has also said some things that made her father and me feel like criminals for trying to help our son. There it was. Criminals. She chose the word so I would look cruel if I repeated it. My aunt's eyes moved to me. Mom looked around the room. I think it would be healing if we could all acknowledge that mistakes were made on all sides. Mistakes were made. I heard Nina's voice in my head. People who benefit from misunderstanding, you don't need more explanations. They need boundaries. Dad cleared his throat. Callie, honey, maybe you can start. I looked at him. Start what? He gave me a pleading look. Just tell your mother you understand why we had to act quickly. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. Reed muttered. This is ridiculous. Mom's eyes filled again. I am still your mother. Someone near the doorway, one of my older cousins, said, Callie, you're lucky to have a family that cares enough to step in during hard times. That was the moment. Not because it was the worst thing anyone said. It wasn't. But it was the clearest proof that Mom's version had already done its work. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out the folder. The room got quieter. Mom's expression changed for 1 second before she fixed it. Callie, she said carefully, what is that? Receipts. Reed sat up. Dad said, let's not do this here. I looked at him. This dinner was your idea. Aunt Tessa put her plate down. My voice shook when I started, but only a little. On April 9th, $16,900 was withdrawn from my savings account by Mom, who was still listed as an authorized user from when I was younger. 2 smaller transfers were made that same week. I found out when I tried to pay my housing deposit for graduate school. Mom stepped forward. That account was connected to family finances. No, I said. It wasn't. I pulled out the bank statements and laid them on the table. This account had my paychecks, graduation money, tax refunds, pet sitting income, and deposits from Grandma specifically meant for my education. Mom's face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Aunt Tessa spoke then. Yes, she does. Every head turned. Tessa reached into her purse and pulled out her own copies. Mom left instructions, she said. Mara knew. Mom's cheeks flushed. Tessa, stay out of this. I stayed out of it for too long. The room went so still I could hear the refrigerator hum. I opened one of Grandma's letters. I didn't read the whole thing. I didn't need to. Just the line that mattered. She wrote, this money is for Callie's schooling and her future. Make sure she has one door nobody can close. My voice almost broke on that last part, but I held it together. Dad looked like someone had turned a light on in a room he had been pretending was empty. Mom whispered, your grandmother didn't understand our financial situation. I looked at her. She understood me. Reed stood suddenly. This is insane. I needed help. Jessa stared at him. You told me Callie agreed. He froze. Mom turned toward Jessa. This isn't your concern. Jessa's face went pale then firm. He lied to me too. Reed snapped. Because everybody was already overreacting. I pulled out the screenshots. I didn't read all of them. Just enough. Mara. Callie has options. You don't. Dean. We'll talk to her after it's done. Reed. Good thing Callie saves like a grandma. Someone made a small sound near the kitchen. Dad closed his eyes. Mom said, private messages taken out of context are not fair. That almost made me laugh. Out of context? I said. What context makes this better? Reed pointed at me. You didn't need it as much as I did. And there it was said out loud in front of everyone. No spin. No family unity. No emergency language. Just the truth. My brother believed his comfort mattered more than my future because my parents had taught him it did. Jessa grabbed her purse. Jessa, Reed said. She shook her head. Don't. He reached for her arm, not roughly, but she stepped back before he touched her. You told me your sister offered, she said. You let me sit beside her at dinner knowing that wasn't true. Reed's mouth opened then closed. Jessa looked at me. I'm sorry. Then she left. The front door closing sounded louder than it should have. Mom turned on me then, all softness gone. Are you happy now? You humiliated your brother. No, I said. He did that. Dad's voice was low. Callie, what do you want? It was the first useful question he had asked. I pulled one final paper from the folder. I want the money returned. Since you've made it clear that won't happen voluntarily tonight, I want a written repayment agreement. Dates. Amounts. Signatures. If you refuse, I will take the bank records, the messages, and Grandma's letters and ask what formal options I have. Mom's face twisted. You would do that to your own parents? I'm not discussing feelings until the money is addressed. You are threatening your family. I'm protecting myself. Dad looked at the paper but didn't touch it. Reed laughed bitterly. Good luck going to Colorado after this. You think anyone's going to help you now? I really looked at him and felt strangely calm. You were never helping me. Nobody spoke. That was when Aunt Tessa walked over and stood beside me. I'll go with her if she needs to talk to someone, she said. And I'll confirm what Mom intended. Mom stared at her sister like she had been slapped. A cousin who had earlier nodded along with Mom quietly set her plate down and said, Mara, did you really take Callie's school money? Mom didn't answer. She didn't have to. The story collapsed right there, not with a dramatic confession but with her silence. I left the dining room and went upstairs to get my duffel bag. My bedroom looked smaller than it had that morning. The boxes were still stacked beside the wall. My Colorado folder was gone from the desk because it was already in my bag. The room looked like a place I had outgrown but had been too scared to leave. Mom followed me. She stood in the doorway crying for real now. Please don't do this, she said. I zipped the bag. Do what? Leave like this. I looked around. How would you prefer I leave? As a family. With love. Not anger. I lifted the bag onto my shoulder. You had years to love me without using me. Her face crumpled. I was trying to save your brother. I know. That was the saddest part. She had chosen him so many times she didn't even recognize it as a choice anymore. Dad was at the bottom of the stairs when I came down. He looked older than he had an hour before. Where are you going? He asked. Nina's. For how long? I don't know. Callie. I stopped near the kitchen counter. The house smelled like casserole and lemon cleaner. Relatives murmured in the dining room, pretending not to listen and definitely listening. Dad said, We can talk tomorrow. You can email me about repayment. Mom made a wounded sound behind me. I took my house key off my key ring and placed it on the kitchen counter. That tiny sound, metal against laminate, felt bigger than any speech I could have made. Then I walked out. The drive to Nina's apartment took 35 minutes. My duffel bag sat in the passenger seat. My phone buzzed over and over in the cup holder until I turned it face down. At a red light, I started crying so hard I missed the green and got honked at. I cried because I was angry. I cried because I was scared. I cried because even after everything, part of me wanted my mother to call and say, Come home, I'm sorry, we'll fix it. She did call. 7 times. She did not say that. The first voicemail was crying. The second was angry. The third said, You embarrassed us in front of everyone. Reed texted, Hope it was worth destroying the family. Dad texted, Please come home so we can discuss this calmly. I didn't answer any message that did not include the words sorry, repayment, or agreement. Nina opened her door before I knocked. Her cat stared at me from the couch like I owed him rent. You good? She asked. No. Come in. I slept on her couch that night under a knitted blanket, my folder of documents in my backpack beside me. I woke up twice reaching for my phone, then stopped myself. The next week was messy. Not dramatic messy. Real messy. I called the bank again. I spoke to my graduate program. I picked up extra shifts. I met Aunt Tessa at a coffee shop where she slid more copied records across the table and squeezed my hand. Some relatives apologized. Quietly, of course. My cousin Lark texted, I didn't know. I'm sorry I believed your mom's version. One aunt sent a Facebook post about forgiveness being important, then deleted it after Tessa commented, accountability first. That was the closest thing to a family scandal we had ever had online. My parents did not immediately return the money. Of course they didn't. But after 2 weeks of me refusing calls and responding only by email, Dad finally sent a message with the subject line, repayment. It was stiff and formal, probably because someone had told him to stop putting emotional pressure in writing. The agreement was not perfect, but it was real. Monthly payments. A lump sum after they refinanced something. Acknowledgement that the money came from my account and was to be repaid to me directly. I had someone look it over before I signed anything. That alone would have offended the old me. The new me slept better because of it. Reed lost his job anyway. Not because of me. Because, as it turned out, quiet settlements do not fix patterns. His company found out enough to decide he was no longer worth the risk. He blamed me for that too, even though I had not contacted his employer, his client, or anyone outside the family. Jessa broke up with him. She sent me one more message weeks later. I hope you get to Colorado. You deserve to go. I kept that one. My mom sent long messages every few days. Some were soft. I miss my daughter. Some were sharp. I hope that program is worth what you've done to this family. Some tried to sound spiritual. One day you'll understand a mother's heart. I stopped reading them after the first line. If there was no accountability, I archived the message. Dad sent shorter texts. Your mom is having a hard day. The house feels empty. Can we talk without money being the focus? I answered that last one. No. Because money was not just money. It was 6 years of my work. It was my grandmother's hope for me. It was every holiday shift I picked up. Every dinner out I skipped. Every time I told myself living in my childhood bedroom at 24 was temporary and worth it. It was proof that my family did not see my sacrifice as sacrifice if it benefited them. By August, I made it to Colorado. Not easily. I had less money than planned. I had a smaller apartment than planned. I bought a scratch kitchen table from a thrift store and slept on a mattress on the floor for 3 weeks. My first grocery trip was so carefully budgeted that I stood in the aisle comparing rice prices like I was making a life-changing decision. But I was there. My apartment was near campus, small enough that I could vacuum the whole place from one outlet. The heat clanked in the mornings. My neighbor upstairs walked like he owned heavy boots and no rugs. The first week I burned toast and set off the smoke alarm. I loved it. On clear mornings I could see the mountains in the distance, blue and steady and real. I worked part-time at a local clinic, went to class, and came home tired in a way that belonged only to me. I taped a copy of my grandmother's letter inside my desk drawer. Make sure she has one door nobody can close. Sometimes I open the drawer just to look at it. I won't pretend I never missed my family. I missed the version I thought I had. I missed Sunday dinners before I understood the cost of my seat at the table. I missed my mother's good moments because she did have them. I missed my dad's quiet hugs before I realized quiet could also be cowardly. I even missed the brother Reed might have been if everyone had stopped rescuing him long enough for him to grow up. But I did not miss being the steady one. I did not miss being praised for needing less. I did not miss answering guilt like it was love. The repayment money started arriving in small amounts. Not enough to erase what happened, but enough to prove I had been right to demand it in writing. Every deposit felt less like victory, and more like a brick being removed from my chest. One evening in October after class, I walked home with cold air stinging my cheeks and a backpack heavy with books. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Callie, Thanksgiving won't feel right without you. Please don't punish us forever. I stood on the sidewalk outside my building, watching my breath turn white in the air. For once I didn't feel the old panic. No rush to soothe her. No need to explain my side again. No guilt sharp enough to turn me around. I typed one sentence. I'm willing to discuss the repayment schedule by email. Then I went inside, locked my apartment door, and made dinner for one in my tiny kitchen. It wasn't glamorous. It was soup from a can, toast I didn't burn this time, and tea in a chipped mug from a thrift store. But the quiet was mine. The money had opened my eyes, but leaving gave me my life back. My parents had spent years teaching me that family meant staying available no matter what it cost me. I had to learn slowly and stubbornly that love without respect is just another kind of debt. And I was done paying. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.